Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to this next episode of the Online Bible Institute Network podcast. The full team's here. We're excited and we've got really good connection. So the optimism abounds as we look ahead to this next message. And in Kingdom Alignment 11, Dad, we got to verse 25 of Matthew chapter 6, where it was, "Therefore, do not worry." And you gave us a really practical, helpful sermon. This week, it looks like we're going to be talking about recognizing the Father's faithfulness. Certainly another very practical message in our lives today. And so, our scripture reading is here on purpose, as you like to say every Sunday in our liturgy. There is Matthew chapter 6, verses 26 through 30. And Pastor Brain, would you read the word for us? And then Dad, would you take us through our notes for this weekend?
All right, we have a long one today. Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Can any of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life? And why do you worry about clothes? See how the flowers of the field grow. They do not labor or spin. Yet I tell you that not even Solomon, in all his splendor, was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, will he not much more clothe you, you of little faith? Amen. Sounded like a rebuke there.
Yeah. Well, he's Jesus, in dealing with people, this was a big deal, worry and anxiety. And he's, when, and I'm sure he's being asked these questions, right? He's responding to a lot of things that people are saying. And I love how he kind of often points to very ordinary seeming things to answer people's questions, like seeds and trees and sheep and children and bread and vineyards and birds and flowers now. And it's because the kingdom of God isn't hidden in like really complicated ideas. It's woven into the ordinary world around us. And in particular, when we're talking about, uh, not worrying, that you have to do that. You have to trust God and you have to be at the right tree and all those things we've talked about. But he's not doing it without giving us a lot of evidence of why he's trustworthy. And so you have to balance that into life, that he's faithful and that you can see his faithfulness all over, not just in how you can sort of look back after you've had this journey for a while and you can see the faithfulness of God in your own life, how he showed up and done things and things have happened that shouldn't have happened and all those other things, and that he's faithfully doing that. But you can sort of just look around you is what he's saying, and you can see that God is faithful. And so he's adding to what he talked about or explaining it more. He says, like, look at the birds and look at the birds of the air. And I think that's because most of us can see birds. They're everywhere, right? And he's not saying like become like the birds. He's saying look at how they live life. Observe the birds and learn from them. They're not careless. They gather food and they build nests and they work, but they aren't consumed by anxiety. And every morning they just begin another day trusting the Creator. And he's saying that, look, and your Father feeds them, and that you're more valuable than them to the Father is what he's saying. And so what he's emphasizing isn't the birds, he's emphasizing the Father. One of the blessings here, I'm not sure how it works where you are, Brain, but in the Keys, we have quite an interesting variety of birds. And when I used to live on Big Pine, we lived more in the sort of woods, and we had a lot of very bird song kind of birds, cardinals and all kinds of stuff running around. Where I live now is a little closer to the water, and I don't have those kind of birds, but we have, doves or pigeons, or we have seagulls, and we have all kinds of neat little seabirds going around. and the doves make noise in the mornings, and we have mockingbirds, and they get things going too. And so I love how early in the morning, with sunrise, sort of, you begin to hear bird song. And long before most of us are busy about and going and doing things, we can hear the birds are up and paying attention. And the song isn't, not because everything is, there's no issues. It's because they get how it works, and they just trust that the Father takes care of them. They're relying in the care of the one who created them. And so that's what the point is that Jesus wants us to get. Look at them and don't become like them, but observe from them. They get what's happening, and you can kind of see what's going on. Then he talks about flowers, lilies, depends on your translation. And he's talking about wildflowers. And the cool thing about wildflowers is that nobody is taking care of them. They're not tended, but they can be fast. They can be fantastic. There's places, when I've driven around the country in the past, there's places where the wildflowers are so amazingly beautiful on the sides of the road that it's breathtaking. And nobody is doing, they're just, that's how that's how it happens, right? And he's saying, Jesus, consider the lilies. And that word consider means it's more than a glance. Reflect on what's going on and how that's happening. And how flowers aren't spending time comparing themselves against other flowers. They're not trying to become a different thing, or they're not competing with one another. They're just becoming what the Creator designed them to be. And then he takes it a step further where he says, even Solomon wasn't arrayed like one of these. And so, even with Solomon and all his wealth, the Father's care demonstrated in how these wildflowers appear is extravagant. And we need to be aware of that and what that looks like. And he says, how much more does he delight in caring for you? Again, Jesus is having us look at things that we can see in daily life to understand the faithfulness of God. And I brought this up last week. I want to bring it up again, that what worry does is it makes us forget our value. And, when he's saying, look at the birds of the air, he takes care of them. Aren't you more valuable than they? And, I didn't go in this direction last week, but what I'm going to say is that the cross forever settles the value that the Father has on you. He didn't merely create us. He came then to rescue us as well. And if we ever begin to doubt about his care or his concern or how much he loves us, we just have to look at the cross. The cross is God's permanent sort of declaration, you matter to me. I love Paul in Romans 8:32. He who did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all, how will he not also, along with him, graciously give us all things? And so we can look to the cross. So there's birds and there's wildflower and there's the cross. And when we're starting to sort of get caught up by worry, there are things that we can immediately look at. That verse I gave everybody last week, I love that one. But sometimes, you need to back that up with some other things. So he's saying, okay, well, just look for some birds. If you're worried, go look at the birds. And just think about them. And go look for some wildflowers. And if that's not, think about the cross. And what that does then is remind of his faithfulness. And then it helps us to trust. And trust is something that grows a day at a time. That's on purpose. That's how he does it. God does those things. It's how he taught us earlier. It's daily bread, daily dependence, daily grace. These are things that we need every day. And so trust grows like that. One day, one prayer, one act of obedience, one reminder of the Father's faithfulness. And it's not sitting back and being passive. It's, we have to do stuff. We have to work. Birds still fly, flowers still grow. We work, we plan, we act responsibly, hopefully. But underneath of it all, when we're engaged with him, we're at rest. And that's, I think, the piece that so many people miss, so many believers miss, is that their soul's not at rest. They're all spun up all the time. And um, it's not how you're supposed to live. It's okay to be active and busy and have a lot of things going on. Oh, that's fine. But if your soul's not at rest, something is wrong. And um, I talk to people who they're just not at rest in their soul, and it's like that's got to be first. I get that we're busy and there are a lot of things going on, and all that's fine. But I think I'm going to say this week that we have some in the Keys. We have really beautiful sunsets and also sunrises that are very pretty, and then we live near the water, so we can see the tide coming in and coming out. And it's not like we wake up wondering if God's going to remember to do the tides or the sunrise or the sunset. You know, it he does it. He takes care of it. We don't have to worry about that stuff.
Right.
Because he's faithfully consistent in all those things. And so we're to learn from that. The Father who faithfully sustains creation, which I believe he's doing, it also faithfully holds your life. And
Amen.
so that's where we're going to head and talk about today. And I think and hope that people find some life there. I got a few ideas at the end and a psalm I'm going to quote at the end, but we'll save that for the weekend. And yeah, so that's kind of it. We're building on the whole idea of we don't have to worry, we have to trust, and we can trust because he's faithful. And then that whole, I love the way Matthew 6 closes out, it's all about his kingdom and his righteousness. Seek first his kingdom and his righteousness. All these things will be added to you, or will be given to you as well. That's a powerful sort of close for this whole series, Heart Alignment, and it sets us up then for Matthew 7, which is now that your heart's aligned, here's some things that you should be doing as you live. So anyway, that's what's going on.
Really, really good stuff there. Excited for this message. Pastor Brain, it's now time in the podcast to pick your brain. What points would you add or kind of think about here in this message?
Yeah, I'll talk about trust because that really hit me. It's especially going to the point where he said it's not passive. I've been thinking about this for some time. Most times we find people who work because they feel that they must, to be able to survive. And yeah, there might be an element of truth in that. But I believe that if we build this kind of trust in God, we would really work as worship. It becomes an act of worship. We will work not because if we didn't work, we would die. We would work because it honors God, it glorifies God, and it enhances our relationship with God. God has us to do it. We as an act of obedience to the God who provides for us. We have to remember always, he says he's the one that gives us the power to make wealth. So while he has called us to make wealth and he has given us the power to do so, we must acknowledge that he's the one doing it at the end of the day. We don't do it in our strength. We do it in the power that he supplies, in the ability that he supplies. And if we have such opportunity, it's because God supplied it. And I really just wish that we could all, just trust God with our lives and find this really easy and have things going for us. But it's often not the case. And I'm wondering, how really can we get to that point where we have total trust that God is going to provide even after we have worked? Because many people, I can say maybe like 50% of the time, who claim that they have to work to make ends meet. When you look at their lives, you see that ends are not meeting for them. They're not. They work so hard and they toil day in, day out, and some work day and night, but there's still nothing to show for it. When it's time to send their kids to school, they still have to trust God, and maybe some go around and take loans to be able to send their kids to school. When they have some bills to pay, they struggle with it, but they're really hardworking. But that should tell us that things don't happen by hard work alone. It happens because God is in the picture. And I love what you often say. We should keep pressing into God. And if we understand that our work is an act of worship, and it's an act of obedience to God, and it enhances our relationship with God, we would actually, in the middle of all the work, find space to rest. We'll find uh, I don't know how to say this, because it's something that I've had to wrestle with myself, because I've always thought that I need to always work so that I always have things, going for me. But I came to realize it's not like that. God has to be in control. He has to tell you what to do, so that you don't keep working hard and breaking down and not taking care of the body that he has given you. So I love this aspect of trust, because first of all, it speaks to me, and then I believe it should speak to everyone else. If we trust God enough, we will find time to rest in the middle of the chaos, in the middle of the busyness and the struggles of life. We will find rest in God. The psalmist says, "Find rest, my soul." You know, um, we should be able to tell our souls, find rest in God, in spite of the chaos, in spite of the difficulties and all of that. And I love that you said birds don't receive food for the next 10 years. It's going to come as we need it. It's going to come as we go. And so we need to keep living while trusting. We need to trust God as we go, and not think that he's going to supply all of life's needs in the moment, at once. It's going to happen as we continue to trust him. And when he supplies today, we trust him for tomorrow. He supplies tomorrow, we trust him for the next. And that's how our trust grows. We build our faith up in him. And yeah, I learned this some time ago, and it's been helping me to find some time to just breathe and know that I cannot get it all done, because God has to get it done for me. And so, yeah, I look forward to what the weekend holds, and I'm hoping that we will see more of how beautiful the grass. When I read this text and think of Solomon, and think that, God really, there are the beauty of flowers, you cannot really compare to any apparel of man, whatever man can invent. It's just so beautiful. And if we can want to harvest beautiful flowers and bring into our home, you know it tells you that God is the master guardian, master supplier. I want to trust that kind of a person, and not trust myself, because I'll fail. Even if I get to make the money, there is the possibility that I'll waste it on wild living and all of that. So let God be in control and let him take over. Yeah. So I love this, and I'm looking forward to the weekend.
Yeah. It's going to be a great message. Make sure you join us at Keys Vineyard Church. Thank you, pastors. Appreciate your wisdom there. And everybody listening, again, join us. We love you all. God bless you. We will see you next time.